In the heart of South Boston, Ethan Brooks lived the life many aspired to. With a stable job at a thriving tech company and a beautiful home shared with his wife Sarah, he had crafted a picture of domestic bliss. Every morning during the school year, he would take their 7-year-old son, Jake, by the hand and walk him to the corner where the school bus awaited. It was a ritual that filled him with an intense pride. His small family was his universe. The laughter of Jake and Sarah echoed in his mind like a favorite song, a melody that seemed destined to play forever. But one fateful afternoon shattered this idyllic existence. Ethan had noticed small changes in Sarah's behavior. Late-night phone calls, the scent of perfume that wasn't his own lingering on her clothes, and a distant look in her eyes when he tried to connect. Yet, he brushed those thoughts aside. He had always been the trusting husband, believing that love and devotion would hold them together. That evening, he wanted to surprise her with dinner. He had made reservations at their favorite Italian restaurant, a place filled with memories of their courtship. When he arrived back home with a bouquet of roses and the smell of garlic bread wafting in the air, he found her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. Curiosity, or perhaps a hunch, spurred him to check the screen. There, a message lit up the darkness of his world. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss your touch." As he read those words, the ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble. Ethan's heart raced, and confusion turned into a burning rage. A hasty glance at the phone revealed more messages, each a dagger piercing his heart with undeniable proof. Her secret wasn't just a momentary lapse. It was a betrayal woven through their lives like a spider's web, capturing unsuspecting prey. The name attached to the messages was familiar. Mark, her colleague, a man he had thought was a friend. His mind raced. Ethan envisioned confrontations, argument, but when he confronted Sarah later that night, all he could feel was disbelief. She initially denied the affair, but the crack in her voice faltered. When he pushed further, cold cruelty seeped into her words. "Ethan, you just don't understand me anymore. Mark makes me feel alive." It was as though each syllable echoed a different betrayal. She had chosen him, the very man who should have been her ally. The following weeks consisted of sleepless nights and a tumultuous flood of emotions. Shock, anger, heartache, and finally, a dark resolve. How could she choose another man over the life they built? Ethan made a plan, a fight for justice for himself and his son, a desire not to allow Sarah's cruel betrayal to push him into the shadows. He would embrace his inner rage and channel it into a weapon. A well-calibrated plan that would not only expose her, but ensure she reaped the consequences of her treachery. The first step was financial. As he dug deeper, Ethan discovered months of deceit in their shared accounts. Sarah had siphoned off funds to lavish gifts on Mark, expensive dinners, hotels, all under the guise of business trips. It turned Ethan's anger into cold determination. He contacted his lawyer, a brilliant woman named Laura, who had navigated many such battles before. Together, they gathered crucial evidence, credit card statements, text messages, anything that would paint her as the villain in this sordid tale. Next was the public humiliation he would orchestrate. Ethan knew that Sarah thrived on social status. She had crafted a life of appearances, consumed by the need to be above others. He would strip her of that illusion. He planned a dinner party, one where he would invite their closest friends, ensuring Mark would be present. In the weeks leading up to it, he turned the screws. Gossip spread like wildfire, carefully controlled. He released snippets of truth, painting a vivid image of Sarah's betrayal to those who mattered most. The night of the dinner would be her reckoning. The evening arrived. Ethan dressed in a tailored suit, a mask of calm over his simmering fury. As their friends filtered into the house, laughter and chatter filled the air, like an intoxicating perfume. Ethan played the charming host, his heart racing with anticipation. When Mark and Sarah finally arrived, hand in hand, it felt surreal. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as Ethan revealed his carefully crafted plan. "Everyone," he began with a voice that commanded attention, "thank you for joining us tonight. I wanted to celebrate honesty, and integrity in our relationships. Ethan glanced at Sarah, the icy smile in her eyes faltering. He continued, "It's always easier to put on a mask than to take it off." With that, he revealed evidence of Sarah's affair, shared the sordid details without hesitation, all while maintaining a perfect composure. The guests' expressions turned from joy to confusion, then to horror, as the air turned thick with disbelief. "You will walk our child to school every morning," Ethan said, locking eyes with Sarah, "while I wake up in Mark's arms." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled in, crushing Sarah's carefully curated image. Cries of betrayal echoed through the space, with friends turning from Sarah in disgust. Mark, who stood by her side, felt the anger from his own friends shift towards him. Who could betray a loyal friend for a moment of lust? In that moment, Ethan didn't just expose Sarah's affair. He stripped her of her dignity. As her mask crumbled, so did the facade of the perfect life she had built. As guests began to murmur and look away from her, Ethan felt a rush of satisfaction. The world that she had manipulated now turned against her, chanting a chorus of judgment that would resonate far beyond this night. After the ordeal, Sarah was broken. The echo of Ethan's words rang in her ears long after the guests left. As the evening came to a close, Ethan found solace not in pity, but in power. In the weeks that followed the dramatic dinner party, the fallout of Ethan's calculated exposé rippled through South Boston's social fabric. Sarah's descent from grace was swift and merciless. Where once she'd floated high on clouds of social superiority, she now found herself drowning in the murky waters of humiliation. Friends who had once admired her now avoided her gaze, their whispers punctuated with disdain as she turned into the town's most talked-about miscreant. Ethan watched with a grim satisfaction as Sarah's world crumbled further. The whispers behind closed doors, the "did you hear about Sarah?" became a constant soundtrack in their circle of friends. Invitations to gatherings dwindled. The community that had once embraced her turned its back. A few of her close friends reached out with half-hearted sympathy, only to retract when met with tales of her betrayal. The final blow came when Mark, entangled in his own turmoil, distanced himself, realizing that his cowardice had only fueled the fire of their social destruction. Ethan learned this through the grapevine. He had made his point. This shifting dynamic began to alter the landscape of their shared life. Ethan had filed for divorce shortly after the dinner, citing her infidelity as the core reason. They appeared at the courthouse in stark contrast. Ethan, confident and resolved, while Sarah's demeanor hinted at a shattered spirit. In the courtroom, her facade of poise melted into desperate attempts to maintain control. Still, she faced Ethan's unwavering commitment to justice. Exposing her financial rapacity was easier than he'd imagined. Their couple's accounts had suffered under her reckless spending on luxury items for Mark. Expert witnesses confirmed her guilt as they unveiled the documentation of transactions from their shared bank accounts that Sarah tried to obfuscate. Witness after witness came forth to testify about her clandestine meetings, painting a picture of manipulation and deceit. It was an overwhelming storm against which Sarah had no effective defense. But for Ethan, the struggle was not only about the numbers, but about regaining the integrity he felt stolen from him. The sting of betrayal sharpened with every revelation made in the courtroom. His resolve transformed into a fierce energy that propelled him forward, sparking righteous indignation that lit a fire within him. He walked into that courthouse, determined not only to win, but to reclaim his identity, a man once secure in the bonds formed with the mother of his child. As they sat before the judge for what would be the final hearing, Ethan took a deep breath. He felt the weight of anticipation fill the room. He needed to make a statement, to stand tall against the woman who had betrayed him so cruelly. He recalled the warmth of their early days together, the laughter, the love, but it transformed into fuel for his drive for justice. He had loved her completely. Now, he sought a different kind of love for himself, one forged in strength and self-respect. Your Honor, he began, his voice steady. I stand here today not only for myself, but for my son, and I demand justice. Sarah's actions have consequences. Consequences that extend beyond me to our child. I request full custody. The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued, yet contemplative. It was a bold move, but Ethan had nothing to lose. Sarah's infidelities had paved the way for not just a dissolution of a marriage, but of her right to influence their child's upbringing. What? Sarah exclaimed, desperation twisting her voice. She turned to Ethan, her anger flaring as she spat. You will regret this. You will pay. Ethan remained collected, marshaling his strength against her venomous words. I will not. I refuse to be your punching bag, he replied, unflinching. As tension simmered in the courtroom, Ethan continued. Sarah has shown that she cannot provide a safe and stable environment for Jake. She's already put her desires above his well-being. Her plastic smile of confidence shattered, revealing the panic beneath as interrogative glare swept across the room. That flicker of fear suggested her cracks were starting to show, surfacing as the reality dawned on her that the swirling storm wasn't passing. It was gathering strength. At that moment, the judge glanced over the evidence presented. A log of the extravagant expenditures on Mark mingled with the neglect of their family obligations. The numbers spoke volumes. Divorced from their emotional context, the analytics of deceit formed a cohesive narrative against her. Custody arrangements will be evaluated with the child's well-being in mind. I will consider evidence of neglect and emotional stability, the judge finally said. It was not merely a warning. It was a verdict, poised to dismantle Sarah's grip on her child. In that moment, Ethan felt a swell of victory. He had not only shielded their son from the treachery, but also begun reclaiming his life from the void of betrayal. Sarah tried in vain to plead with the judge, to regain some semblance of control, her words spilling out in panic. It was an agonizing dance of despair, each attempt further emphasizing the depths to which she had sunk. As they emerged from the courthouse, a heavy silence weighed on the air, punctuated only by the pounding heart in Ethan's chest. With a deep breath, he turned to face Sarah one last time. She stood there, her makeup smudged and eyes wide, with the dawning realization of her impending fate. This was not just the loss of a marriage, it was a devastating collapse of the life she had painstakingly curated. Imagine having to tell Jake why you chose Mark over him, he said, his voice cold yet resonant with finality. The silence hung, oppressive and eloquent, as he savored this moment of empowerment. Ethan saw the acknowledgement of defeat cross her face, and it felt like the heaviest chains were finally lifting. Ethan turned, leaving Sarah behind to grapple with consequences. No forgiveness, no sympathy. In his mind, he envisioned a new chapter unfolding with Jake, a life built on truth and integrity. He had fought against despair to reclaim not just his dignity, but to create an environment where his son could thrive. As he strode away, he resolved to build a future unencumbered by deception or betrayal. The triumph of a man who had faced down his demons and emerged ready to embrace the life that awaited him. Life would never be the same, but now it would be his, and he would be the one writing the narrative. The weeks that followed the courtroom proceedings unfolded like a whirlwind. Ethan was now a man transformed. The remnants of his former life burned away by the fires of betrayal, replaced by the unyielding resolve to create a better future for himself and Jake. The loss of his marriage had morphed into an unexpected liberation. The world he entered each day, while fraught with challenges, now pulsed with opportunity and potential. Ethan embraced fatherhood with newfound fervor, turning his home into a refuge filled with laughter and love. He redecorated Jake's room, turning it from a space shared with his mother into a sanctuary tailored just for him. Every Saturday morning became a ritual. Pancake breakfast smeared with chocolate syrup, followed by impromptu backyard soccer matches that broke into giggles, resonating through the neighborhood. However, Sarah was not finished. The sting of humiliation and her dwindling social status festered in her heart, and she concocted desperate strategies to claw back agency and control. Her attempts to undermine Ethan's newfound position were subtle yet insidious. Whenever she caught wind of conversations among their mutual friends, she spread lies about Ethan's stability as a father. "He's going to turn Jake against me," she hissed, attempting to paint herself as the victim to anyone who would listen. But the more she lashed out, the more her viability faded among their peers. Ethan's friends rallied around him, offering support and encouragement. A small circle of loyal companions helped fortify the emotional support he needed, alongside a few family members who made the trek to show their solidarity. They assured him that he was doing right by Jake, and that Sarah's actions would ultimately backfire. They pointed out the flaws in her narrative, underscoring the reality that her facade was crumbling like plaster in the rain. One afternoon, Sarah called Ethan after a particularly tense week, oscillating between anger and desperation. "I want to see Jake," she spat. "He's my son too." But Ethan would not budge. "Not until you prove that you can be a stable influence in his life," he replied firmly, a steel edge to his voice, his heart unyielding. "You've shown that your decisions are reckless and selfish." The growing gap between them festered like an open wound, with Ethan pouring more energy into his work while navigating the complex dance of the co-parenting dynamic. There were good days and bad ones. The clouds of doubt still loomed. Yet despite the chaos raging around him, Ethan felt himself changing. Each challenge grew more manageable, as if the very act of surviving and thriving in this chaos allowed him to reclaim misplaced pieces of himself. He even began to appreciate the struggle for what it was, a crucible for his liberation. Meanwhile, Jake was doing relatively well, buoyed by the sense of stability and love Ethan offered. His laughter permeated the air like music, and Ethan realized his son's joy was the best balm for the bruises of betrayal. Ethan made it a point to engage Jake's interests even more, enrolling him in soccer, attending art classes, and actively participating in his school's activities. This newfound involvement paid dividends. Jake smiled wider, thrived academically, and learned to navigate difficult emotions, feeling secure in his father's love. Yet, Sarah's embodiment of toxicity seeped back into their lives one gray afternoon when Jake returned home from school, anxious and worried. "Dad, my friends at school said their parents heard mean things about you and Mom," he admitted, his gaze dropping. They said you don't want to let Mom see me. What if she's right?" Ethan felt a profound sadness wash over him. How could he protect his son from the fallout of adult mistakes? "Jake," he began, kneeling down to meet his son's gaze. "Sometimes people say things they don't understand. Your mom made choices that hurt us, but you must know. I will always fight for you." He pressed on. "She loves you, but right now, she's not making good choices. But you, buddy, you're safe here." Jake listened, seeming to absorb every word like a sponge, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but I want to see her too." Ethan's heart weighed heavily. He had sought to shield Jake from the storm. "We'll figure this out," he said, knowing that navigating these emotions wouldn't be easy. "We'll find the right time, I promise." Before long, Ethan discovered that Sarah had moved into a small apartment in a neighboring suburb, desperate to reclaim her status as a mother. She reached out through channels, wanting to visit Jake, but Ethan's enacted boundaries remained firm. As exclusive invitations to birthday parties and family gatherings rolled in, Sarah's isolation grew palpable. In the dim light of her loneliness, she grappled with choices made from a place of impulse and desire, refusing to truly reflect on the pain caused, the lengths to which she'd once sank to avoid confrontation. When the time came to consider a supervised visit, Ethan did what he could to remain civil for Jake's sake. He approached it methodically, organizing a simple outing at a local park, an afternoon filled with laughter, ice cream, and an art project that would foster inclusivity. He instructed Jake, "You can have fun and tell her about school. But remember that it's important to stay safe. The anticipation weighed heavily on him as Sarah arrived, her demeanor uneasy. Dressed in a casual sundress, she seemed like a remnant of her former self, attempting to project calmness while she was a bundle of nerves. "Ethan," she said, glancing at Jake, who was busy creating chalk drawings on the pavement, "I want to talk to you." "Let's focus on Jake first," Ethan replied, unwilling to engage in distraction. Deep down, he still had the fears of losing control of the narrative. But amid the familiar pangs of pain, he wouldn't allow himself to be ensnared by her attempts to manipulate his emotions. As the day wore on, Jake brought out laughter and joy that resonated through the park, reminding Ethan that this was the essence of healing. The brief moments of genuine laughter etched more meaning than any sorrow from the past. He could feel hope starting to sprout, despite the shadows that lingered. When it was finally time to call it a day, Sarah approached Ethan. "Can we talk now? Just the two of us?" she asked, her voice tense with a range of emotions. Ethan felt apprehensive but nodded. What could be more defining than this moment? "Ethan, I've been reflecting on everything. I messed up royally, I see that now. I want to be in Jake's life, but I know I have to earn your trust back," she pleaded, her eyes earnest but wary. "Trust is built over time, Sarah," he replied, firm but fair, noting the raw vulnerability in her expression. "It's not going to be easy. You need to demonstrate that you are committed to being a responsible mother." The conversation unfolded into a delicate negotiation of boundaries and responsibilities. A hard truth hovered between them. The ghost of betrayal still loomed, yet Ethan understood that even wounded people could recover if they tread forward with an earnest heart. As twilight embraced the sky, they agreed on a gradual system of supervised visits, a gesture of hope against the weight of past transgressions. Returning home with Jake, Ethan felt changed. Again, he had taken the tumult of their shared history, doused it in emotional honesty, and crafted options toward resolution and clarity. At that moment, looking at Jake sleeping soundly, now cocooned in a haven of safety and affection, Ethan understood the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but he felt equipped, resolute, and uncompromising. Whatever trials awaited, he would face them with the fortitude of a man who had endured the storm and come out the other side not shattered or defeated, but stronger, prepared to carve out a path for himself and his son with unwavering grace. With the new agreement in place concerning Sarah's supervised visits, Ethan found himself grappling with unfamiliar terrain. As days turned into weeks, Sarah arrived at their agreed-upon locations with the kind of nervous anticipation that characterized someone walking a tightrope, desperately trying to balance the weight of past transgressions with the hope of future redemption. Each visit was suffused with tension, a mix of excitement for Jake and a palpable hesitance between him and Sarah. Ethan's heart ached for Jake, who blossomed with each encounter. It was clear that his son yearned for this connection with his mother. Ethan watched as they painted together, tossing colors onto canvas while their laughter danced in the air, freeing them from the looming shadows of betrayal. The moment was bittersweet, underscoring the complexities of familial bonds. Jake saw the good in Sarah, while Ethan struggled to reconcile that with what she had done. Nevertheless, Ethan took note of Sarah's attempts to engage earnestly. During each visit, she showed a glimmer of remorse, weaving her apologies into threads of memory as they reminisced about Jake's early childhood, his first words, his first steps, when they were still a unit. Yet, her apologies often felt surface level, like she was casting lines into the deep waters of reconciliation, without truly addressing the shark lurking below. The haunting memories of betrayal tugged at Ethan's mind, reminding him that rebuilding trust was a painstaking journey fraught with the potential for further heartache. One afternoon, during a particularly bright sunny day at the park, an incident unfolded that would shake the tenuous ground they had been carefully treading. Sarah arrived in a distressed state, her face drawn and her voice shaky as she approached Ethan, while Jake played nearby, oblivious to the undercurrents between them. I need to talk to you now, she said, urgency etched into her features. As Ethan glanced at Jake, seated on the grass and immersed in his drawing, he could feel his instincts flaring. Can it wait until later? Ethan responded, adopting a tone filled with caution. Jake's in a good place right now. No, it can't wait. It's about Mark, she insisted, the tremor in her voice betraying a swell of anxiety. What about him? Ethan replied, his heart rate quickening. He wants me back, she blurted out, each word punctuating the air like a thunderclap. He's been pressuring me to come home, to leave all of this behind. Ethan felt a wave of anger surge. You are kidding me, right? After everything? He stood there, confusion morphing into rage. Did she actually consider going back to the very source of their turmoil? Listen, I don't plan on doing anything stupid. I'm trying to be a good mother. But he's claiming he's changed. He says he'll help realign my life, Sarah stammered, eyes wide in fear and desperation. Ethan could only stand there, body rigid with anger and disbelief. You can't be serious, he replied, incredulity pouring from his words. You think you can just jump ship back to him? What about us? What about Jake? I don't want to hurt him, she cried, gesturing toward Jake, who was blissfully unaware, blissfully innocent. But I don't know if I can keep doing this without help, without someone who actually understands me. In that moment, Ethan saw the all-too-familiar flicker of self-doubt in her eyes, a haunting echo of the woman he had once loved, reflecting on her losses without acknowledging the pain she had inflicted. What you need to understand is that, right now, your son comes first. If you make that choice, you will lose everything. Her expression was pained, wavering between regret and a desperate yearning for stability. I don't want to disappoint Jake. I just don't know how to handle what's happening to me. Ethan took a step closer, words soft but firm. You're not just trying to reshape your life. You're reshaping his as well. You have to bounce back and own your decisions, or there will be no safe ground for any of us. If you go back to him, you might lose your chance to be a part of your son's life. Tears pooled in Sarah's eyes as she fought to grasp the weight of those words. I'll try, but leave Mark behind. He's the past. Keep the focus on Jake and make that your priority. Ethan understood the delicate balance of honesty and ultimatum while keeping Jake unaware. Over the ensuing weeks, Sarah wrestled with her choices while Ethan threw himself deeper into fatherhood and his job. Their interactions became strained, yet glimmers of sincerity emerged amidst the tension as he saw Sarah genuinely trying to improve. Slowly, she began attending counseling sessions, a method of reclaiming her footing. One day, while waiting for Sarah to arrive for an outing, Ethan took a moment to reflect on how much had changed. Things were far from perfect, yet they had begun to shift toward a more stable dynamic. The raw pains of betrayal were beginning to dull, replaced by a cautious hope for what could come next. But, unpredictably, tragedy struck when Ethan received a phone call one evening. His voice trembled as he answered. It was a mutual friend who had been out with Sarah. Ethan, I need to tell you something. I think Mark is back in Sarah's life. They were spotted together last night. The words knocked the air out of him, a swift punch to the gut. His instincts ignited a primal need to protect Jake and defend what he had fought so hard to rebuild. I need to know exactly what happened, he replied, moving into full-scale armor mode. She seemed different, re-energized. They were hugging, talking closely. I don't know what that means, the voice faltered, filled with concern. Ethan ended the call, the implications crashing over him like waves against a shoreline. Was she repeating her mistakes? How had she slipped so easily, trailblazing back to a dangerous comfort? When Sarah arrived for the scheduled visit the next day, Ethan confronted her with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. I need to know, are you seeing Mark again? Shock mirrored on her face, twisting into a defensive stance. No, it's not like that. I was just lying to me? He interrupted, his voice low and steady, but laced with the intensity of his frustration. Because that's what this feels like. Ethan, I promise I'm trying to do better. I'm in a vulnerable place. No more excuses, he cut her off, infuriated. Do you care about Jake? because this will destroy any chance of a future for you and him. You can't continue to chase phantom happiness without acknowledging how it impacts your son." As Ethan spoke, he laid bare the environment they shared, ripping through the pretenses and fortifying the urgency of demonstrating stability for everyone involved. The ensuing silence weighed between them, thick and agonizing. She glanced down, tears pooling in her eyes. "I'm scared. I need help. I don't have patience for someone who can't commit to being a mother and an adult." "Choices have consequences," he replied, scarcely able to contain his indignation. Sarah remained silent, her conviction faltering. As they interfaced in this battle, Ethan felt the walls closing in. His chest tightened with the ferocity of fear. Fear of failure, fear of losing everything he had fought for. "I'll make better choices. I promise," she finally replied, voice trembling but resolute. This wasn't the first promise she had made, yet a spark of hope simmered beneath the breaths they exchanged. As weeks progressed, with moments of tension accompanied by longer stretches of healing, Ethan slowly began to wonder if Sarah truly wanted to be better, or if she was merely clinging to the shreds of familiarity in the wake of dark days. Days turned to months, and autumn approached. The leaves began to fall, whispering tales of change all around. Determined to emerge from this with unwavering strength, Ethan forged ahead, hoping that the shifts they all experienced could usher in new beginnings, redemption born from pain, and a chance to reclaim a family. With each passing day, he resolved to uphold not just his integrity, but also create an unshakable foundation for Jake. He would not let history dictate who they could become. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but as he watched Jake run around the park, animated and alive, determined to protect this vivid joy, he knew that this fight would be worth every ounce of effort. As autumn settled over South Boston, the air crisp and sharp, Ethan felt the weight of uncertainty lifting. Yet the specter of Sarah's past decisions still loomed. Despite her promises, the ghost of Mark, her former lover, lingered in the shadows, a constant reminder of betrayal. With every passing day, Ethan remained vigilant, testing the waters of co-parenting, ever wary of the fragility of Sarah's commitment to change. Jake thrived, immersed in school and extracurricular activities. His laughter echoed through their home, a soothing balm amidst the chaos that had unfolded. Yet, Ethan understood that a child's innocence was precious and fragile. He remained protective, ensuring Jake's world was filled with joy while navigating the complexities of his own heartache. One Thursday evening, after a long day at work, Ethan was preparing dinner when he heard the familiar ring of his phone. He glanced at the screen and saw it was Sarah calling. For a moment, apprehension welled in him. He answered, cautious. "Hey, Ethan." Her voice was hesitant, filled with a tentative urgency. "I need to talk. Can we meet?" He hesitated, thoughts racing. "Is this about Jake?" "It's about us. And Mark," she admitted. The mention of her ex sent a flicker of anger surging through him. "Please, can we meet? I need you to hear me out. It's important." Though he felt a wave of reluctance, curiosity pushed him forward. "Fine," he replied. "How about the cafe on 5th? Tomorrow at noon?" As he hung up, perception tinged with dread permeated his thoughts. Whatever discussion lay ahead would inevitably influence their tenuous arrangement. Would this be another promise? Would she slide back into old habits? Or had she truly sought to change? The following day, Ethan arrived at the cafe early, tapping his fingers against the table as time seemed to stretch. Moments stretched into an hour before Sarah arrived, her expression one of uncertainty. She sat down, glancing around before meeting his gaze. "Thanks for meeting me," she began, her voice steady, but lacking the resolve he had hoped for. "I've been thinking a lot." "What about?" Ethan pressed, his heart racing with anticipation. "About the way I've treated you, about everything. And about Jake," she said, sounding smaller than he recalled. "I messed up so badly, and I realize I can't keep messing with his life. He needs consistency, not chaos." Ethan nodded, unsure how to respond. He felt a flicker of hope, but remained guarded. "What does consistency mean to you, Sarah? We've danced around this long enough." Taking a deep breath, she continued, "I've decided to cut all ties with Mark. It was just a phase where I was trying to find comfort in the familiar." She paused, searching his expression for signs of disbelief. "But I realized how destructive that was. My connection with him was never real. It was just a way to escape. I want to focus on Jake, on his happiness." Ethan's resolve wavered. The sincerity in her voice called to him, yet remained clouded by his memories. "You know that has to start with action. Words aren't enough now. What will you do to prove that you're in this for real?" "I'm willing to go to therapy," she said, her voice tremulous but determined. "And if it means attending parenting classes or whatever else I need to do, I will. I need to become the mother Jake deserves. I'm asking for your help." "Help?" Ethan echoed skeptically. "You've let yourself be manipulated before. How can I trust that things will be different this time? Because I'm realizing I need you in my life, not as a couple, but as co-parents who care for our son. I don't want Jake to have to choose between us anymore. I can't live with that. So, will you help?" Ethan felt the walls he had fortified within himself begin to crack. Could he really open that door again, or would it lead to more heartbreak? "I want to believe you," he said slowly. "But trust is rebuilt with actions, not just promises. I need time to see if you truly mean this." They finished their conversation, the tone less confrontational than it had been in recent pasts, yet rife with quiet tension. Ethan walked out of the cafe, gripping hope and doubt in tandem as he headed home. Jake was waiting for him, having immersed himself in art when he returned. "Dad, look what I made," Jake exclaimed, presenting a colorful painting of a sunset that bathed the room in hues of orange and yellow. Happiness swelled in Ethan's chest as he knelt, complimenting his son's creativity. "It's beautiful, buddy. You have such talent." Jake beamed in delight, and for a moment, the weight of adulthood melted away. "Can I hang it up in my room?" he asked, eyes sparkling. "Absolutely, let's make it the centerpiece," Ethan agreed. Later that night, while Jake slept soundly, Ethan grappled with the day's conversation, his heart divided. He could sense his emotions rising like waves, an urge to protect Jake, but also recognize that healing was a process not fully understood. The dilemma of how to navigate their co-parenting split weighed heavy. Over the next few weeks, a fragile routine began to materialize. Sarah attended therapy, often updating Ethan on her progress, proving she was willing to put in effort. Slowly but surely, she began to rebuild the trust she had dismantled. Her willingness to change resonated through her actions. She enrolled in a parenting workshop and regularly shared resources with him that showed her commitment. Ethan found himself viewing her progress through a lens of cautious optimism. Yet, even as they began to forge a more cooperative relationship, Sarah's decision to cease contact with Mark didn't completely banish the turbulent echoes of their past. Doubts still flickered in the corners of Ethan's mind. He often found himself surprised by how much he still cared for her well-being, while maintaining strong boundaries geared toward raising Jake. One afternoon, while picking Jake up from school, Ethan noticed Sarah waiting near the entrance, seemingly on edge, as she fidgeted with her phone. When she caught sight of him, her expression morphed from anxious uncertainty into a tentative smile. "Hey," she called, her demeanor shifting as she approached. "How was Jake's day?" "Pretty good. He's been drawing again. An art class project due next week," Ethan replied, his tone neutral. "Oh, I'd love to see it," she exclaimed, genuine excitement illuminating her face momentarily. "Can we all meet up this weekend to discuss his art?" Ethan bristled at the abruptness of her suggestion. "Are you sure you're ready for that? I mean, we barely feel settled as a team." "Trust me, this is about Jake," Sarah insisted, her eyes radiating determination. "He should enjoy his successes with both of us." This time, Ethan weighed her intentions more carefully. Could they indeed handle a united front? What if this was a step toward embracing the change that was slowly forming? "I'll talk to Jake and see how he feels about it," Ethan relented, setting aside alarm. "But you have to be prepared. This isn't the past. It's a chance to build something new." Days passed, transitioning quickly as the weekend approached. He shared Sarah's proposal with Jake, who weaved a tremendous tale of imagination, how they could celebrate the fruits of his labors, a joyful reunion of sorts. All of a sudden, anxiety twisted uncomfortably in Ethan's stomach as the day arrived. He wanted to believe he was doing the right thing. In many ways, it felt like taking a leap off a cliff, eyes wide open, knowing fully well that whether he soared or sank would hinge on not just him, but everyone involved. At the cafe they had selected, the sun painted the windows with hues of gold, sparking a glow to match the sense of hope and trepidation swirling within him. Ethan entered first, spotting Jake, whose excitement bubbled over. Sarah appeared shortly afterward, holding a bouquet of flowers for her son. "Where are my favorite boys?" she called cheerily, moving to wrap her arms around both of them. Ethan felt the warmth of their connection, even amid his lingering doubts. This would be a chance to foster the bond of their family anew and to harbor hope in the possibility of genuine healing. As they sat down together, bantering and swapping smiles, Ethan sought not only to support Jake, but to explore whether they could rally against the history of pain together. Exponentially, their lives began to intersect. They shared stories, laughter, and aspirations. While uncertainty lined the edges of their gathering, the very act of sitting at the same table marked a new chapter. As the afternoon sun dipped, casting long shadows on their round table, Ethan felt a flicker of renewal and strength, a glimmering chance to redefine what family meant, as both the past and future threaded together in the unknown expanse before them, awaiting possibilities untold. As the week unfolded after that pivotal meeting at the cafe, Ethan found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, balancing the remnants of his past and the possibility of building a new foundation with Sarah. Each encounter resonated with a sense of cautious optimism that lingered in the air like the scent of fall leaves, vibrant yet unpredictable. Jake seemed to thrive in the newfound dynamic, his laughter echoing through the halls, unfurling hope where shadows had once loomed. Ethan monitored Sarah closely, seeking signs of genuine change. Their interactions during Jake's visits became more fluid, a gentle ebb and flow that allowed mutual respect to blossom, even amidst the complexities of their shared history. He found that their discussions regarding Jake, it was as if speaking about their son unlocked an avenue of communication that had long been stifled by hurt feelings and misunderstandings. One Friday evening, Sarah proposed they attend Jake's school concert together. "I think it would mean a lot to him for us to both be there," she suggested, her tone reflective yet earnest. Ethan weighed the risk against potential reward. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked cautiously. "You know how these events can transform easily into explosive territory." "Yes," she answered, her voice firm, "but Jake deserves to see us united. I'm committed to making this work, Ethan." With a mixture of hope and trepidation, Ethan agreed. They spent the next day helping Jake prepare, choosing just the right outfit, rehearsing his lines, and goading him into practicing his songs until he was utterly confident. Jake's excitement radiated off him as he danced through the house. The night of the concert arrived, a perfect autumn evening where the sky turned to shades of indigo and the air filled with the chorus of chirping crickets. As they entered the school auditorium, Ethan felt the familiar tightness in his chest, old scars resurfacing at the thought of sharing this moment. Would their past betrayals sour the atmosphere? They settled into their seats as a gentle buzz of anticipation filled the air, punctuated by the shuffle of excited children. Jake appeared in the spotlight, his eyes scanning the audience, finally locking onto them both. His face broke into a wide grin, illuminating the auditorium. "Look, Mom! Look, Dad!" he squealed, waving enthusiastically. Something shifted within Ethan as he witnessed Jake's jubilation, a balm against the remnants of doubt. Perhaps familial connections could heal, even if the past was scarred and marked with shadows. Sarah leaned closer, her whispered encouragements meant for Jake but also enveloped Ethan in warmth. As the concert unfolded, the children sang songs about friendship, dreams, and togetherness, their voices intertwined, creating a melodic tapestry that pulsed with youthful innocence. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he felt so entirely present, absorbed in joy. He glanced at Sarah, seeing fragments of the woman he had once loved surface, her laughter genuine, her smile illuminating. In some distant way, they felt like a family again, each moment savoring the sweetness of connection. Afterward, as Jake hugged them both, the euphoria echoed within the auditorium as parents snapped pictures and cheered. Ethan's heart swelled. There was magic in the air, the kind that whispered of possibility and reinvention. They joined Jake as he bounded off to a group of friends, eager to celebrate. "Did you hear us?" "We were awesome," Jake exclaimed, proudly showcasing his performance while basking in the attention of both his parents. "He truly was," Sarah agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of him." They instinctively fell into conversation about Jake's interests, planning what they might do together over the weekend. It felt natural, almost like slipping into comfortable shoes. Ethan reveled in watching Sarah engage earnestly, demonstrating that perhaps there was hope for their relationship beyond co-parenting. However, as the evening progressed, Ethan couldn't shake the reminder of the fragile balance they maintained. When the sounds of laughter faded and they returned home, he lay awake in bed, unease mixing with the exhilaration of the night. The next day, they took Jake to the park, where he could play with friends from school. A crisp breeze sent leaves fluttering to the ground, the vibrant colors dancing like their newfound connection. Before long, Sarah suggested they get hot chocolate from the nearby cafe. As they sat outside, sipping warm drinks amid the cheerful chatter of children playing, Sarah appeared contemplative. "Ethan," she started, her voice steady, "I want to really address Mark. I need to sort this out." The mention of Mark tightened Ethan's chest. "Is there a reason this is coming up now?" he asked, trying not to sound defensive. "I know it affects our dynamic," she admitted. "I've been thinking. It's not healthy for either of us, and it could confuse Jake further. I need to clarify things for myself, too." Ethan considered her words. The old wounds felt open and raw, but it was a necessary conversation. "I agree that you should cut him off completely. It's not just about you anymore. It's about creating stability for Jake. I'm going to tell him I've moved on, that I'm focusing on my family," she continued. "I have to close that chapter completely to prove to you that I can do this." The gravity of that moment hung in the air, heavy yet potent with possibilities. "Just know it might not go over easily. He may react badly, especially if he thinks he has a chance to come back. I'm prepared for that. I need to do this alone. And I hope you can be there for me," she urged, vulnerability shimmering in her eyes. Ethan's heart softened, allowing for the reins of grudging trust to loosen. "I'll support you, but you have to be absolutely committed. There's no going back." "I am committed. More than I've ever been," she promised, her sincerity ringing clear. Through the following days, Sarah prepared to sever all ties with Mark. Ethan watched her undergo that change, a transformation both remarkable and heartbreaking. The woman who had once seemed so lost was now confronting her past, revealing layers of strength he hadn't known existed. On the day of her confrontation with Mark, he accompanied her for moral support, wary yet resolute. They found themselves standing outside a cafe where Sarah had arranged to meet him, pulse racing with tension and anticipation. "You got this," he encouraged her. "Just remember why you're doing this." With determination, Sarah entered the cafe. Ethan watched as the scene unfolded through the window, heart pounding in his chest. She took a seat opposite Mark, who appeared puzzled and impatient. Their conversation began, and he could see emotions scanning across Sarah's face. Anxiety, anger, determination. A few minutes passed before Ethan was drawn in by a sudden wave of intensity. Sarah's animated gestures matched her words as she stood her ground, and it was clear the conversation was heated. He briefly contemplated intervening but resisted, knowing this was her fight. He focused on Jake, who played near a nearby fountain, blissfully unaware of the gravity settling around him. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he noticed Mark leap from the table, visibly upset. Ethan's instincts flared at the sight. He clenched his fists, ready to step in if necessary. Just then, Mark stepped towards Sarah, gesturing wildly. Ethan readied himself, prepared to usher Jake away or intervene, if he needed to shield them both, heart racing as their tension reached a crescendo. But as quickly as the confrontation unfolded, he saw Sarah reclaim her space. She pointed firmly, voice raised just enough for Ethan to hear, "I have a family now. I'm not going back, Mark. This is between me and my son. Leave us alone. Don't you dare think you can manipulate me anymore." Mark, taken aback, recoiled slightly, watching as she confronted the chaos he represented. Ethan felt a surge of raw pride. She was battling through the storm, and it filled him with hope. With newfound strength, Sarah took a deep breath, turning her back decisively as she walked away, straight back to him and Jake. In that moment, more than anything, Ethan wanted to envelop Sarah, not as a lover or partner, but as a comrade emerging from a complex battlefield. When she reached him, emotion painted across her features, color brightening her cheeks. Ethan could almost see the weight of the past lifting as she met his gaze. "I did it," she breathed, relief brimming in her eyes. They exchanged silent affirmations, eyes locking in a moment of understanding. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. And in allowing that moment to unfurl, it became a defining element in their ever-evolving narrative. Late that night, as they prepared to tuck Jake in, Ethan felt a resurgence of hope wash over him. Hope not just for their family's reconstruction, but for the notion that healing could be active. Perhaps, along the way, they could forge a connection that was unforeseen yet radiant, filled with the potential of what it meant to truly rebuild. As he settled into bed, he smiled at the thought of what tomorrow might bring, a chance to embrace their new beginnings, step by step, as they navigated the intricate tapestry of healing and rebuilding their life together, one day at a time. As October waned into chilly November, the air thickened with the anticipation of the upcoming holidays. Ethan found himself reflecting on the transformation that had taken place over the months. All the pain and insecurity stemming from Sarah's betrayal seemed to be mellowing into something softer, birthing a loose-knit family approach that didn't depend on romantic attachments, but rather on shared purpose, a profound love for Jake, and a desire to protect him at all costs. Despite the complexity of their relationship, the thawing tension transformed their interactions into moments of meaningful collaboration. They continued to communicate openly, discussing Jake's needs while confronting the remnants of their past with greater equanimity. Watching Sarah engage enthusiastically with Jake during their outings, Ethan felt hope blossoming like the first crocuses of spring, suggesting that perhaps there was a future they could carve out together, one defined by respect and shared responsibility rather than resentment and bitterness. One crisp Saturday, Sarah suggested they visit the local pumpkin patch, an event Jake had been eagerly awaiting. The thought of the three of them together elicited a mix of excitement and apprehension in Ethan. This would be another chance to bridge the gaps in their family history, yet it also meant testing their newfound stability amidst the spectrum of emotions still swirling beneath the surface. At the pumpkin patch, Ethan felt the air humming with joy, palpable in the laughter of families enjoying the seasonal festivities. He watched Jake scamper between rows of pumpkins, his face lit up with delight as he excitedly examined the perfect specimens, his wide eyes reflecting the golden hues surrounding them. "Look at this one, Dad," Jake shouted, holding up a pumpkin twice the size of his head. "It's a great choice, buddy. We can carve it tonight," Ethan replied, delighting in Jake's enthusiasm. As they explored the patch, Sarah leaned closer to Ethan, whispering, "Thank you for being willing to do this together. I know it wouldn't have been easy a few months ago." "I appreciate you making the effort," Ethan replied, savoring the pleasant connection that seemed to weave through their interactions now. It means a lot to Jake. However, as they moved to select more pumpkins, Sarah caught sight of someone from the corner of her eye. Mark was there, meandering through the crowd, seemingly at home amidst the harvest festivities. Ethan's heart sank, fury quickly bubbling to the surface. Despite the strides Sarah had made, the sight of her ex stirred unease in the core of his being. "Ethan, look!" Sarah began, noting his tension. "I see him," he interrupted harshly. the warmth of the day suddenly fading. Do you really think it's a good idea for us to engage? I don't think he should be here. Sarah inhaled, weighed down by the reality of the situation. I need to handle this. Just stay close to Jake. Ethan's desire to protect both Sarah and Jake intensified. What if he tries to talk to you? I'll be fine. Her voice was calm yet resolute, and he could see the spark of determination in her eyes. It's part of moving on, Ethan. I can't keep being haunted by my past. He hesitated, wanting nothing more than to shield her from potential conflicts. But as she walked away, he chose to follow at a distance, heart racing with apprehension. Mark spotted Sarah before she reached him and approached with a disarming casualness, one that unnerved Ethan the moment their eyes met. Mark's demeanor was relaxed, as if the past casually ignored the churning emotions hidden beneath the surface. Ethan watched, heart pounding, as their conversation unfolded. I didn't expect to see you here, Mark said with a hint of amusement in his voice. Looks like you've moved on. I'm focusing on my family now, Mark, Sarah replied, holding her ground, and you need to respect that. Mark chuckled dismissively, the sound grating on Ethan's nerves. Family, huh? Is that what you call this little charade? We both know it'll fall apart. Come on, we had something special. At that moment, Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. Unable to contain his anger, he closed the distance, inserting himself between them. You need to leave, Mark, he said sternly. Sarah has made it clear she wants nothing to do with you. The confrontational exchange drew Sarah's gaze like a magnet. Ethan, wait. I'm not waiting. You're not welcome here. And to think you can just waltz back into her life and toy with emotions again is disgusting. You've hurt both of us enough. This is no longer your playground. Mark's smirk faded. You think you can just intimidate me? You're being childish. I know the truth. Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe deeply, fighting against the urge to physically confront Mark. This isn't about you anymore. It's about Jake and what he needs. You're not part of that equation. Whatever you say, Mark shot back, raising his hands in mock surrender. Just remember what you're playing at. With a harsh exhale, Mark retreated, leaving Ethan seething with a mix of anger and worry as his eyes flickered back to Sarah. Are you okay? He asked, concern etched into his brow. She usually handles these things better, Ethan said, not bothering to hide the irritation in his voice. You shouldn't have to deal with him. You've moved on, and I'll support you through this. But not if he gets in the way. I know, she replied, her tone softened, understanding the turmoil he felt. I shouldn't have let him get to me. I can do this, I promise. It's just complicated. Ethan sighed heavily, emotions racing through him. We've put in so much work to rebuild, he said, exhaling sharply. Let's focus on building our lives as they are, for Jake. We can create a family without him intruding again. I won't let him, Sarah reassured him, the resolute expression on her face returning. I want what you want. With that, they returned to Jake, who was kicking a soccer ball with newfound friends, playing, laughing in that innocent way that made everything worth it. They gathered around him as they carved pumpkins later that evening, and laughter filled the room as they created goofy faces that made Jake howl with delight. It was a normalcy they craved, an anchoring moment set within the chaos of their past. As Ethan cleaned up the remnants of pumpkin guts from the table, sharing a smile with Sarah over their joint efforts, he saw how far they had come together. Their paths had twisted through pain and heartbreak, yet at that moment, the pulsing pulse of their small family unit beckoned with something beautiful against the backdrop of all they had endured. I know life won't always be easy, Ethan said quietly as they finished, wiping off his hands. Neither will co-parenting, Sarah replied, genuine warmth coloring her voice. But it's worth the effort. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching Jake play, feeling the weight of their combined pasts, easing just a little more as they each turned toward the horizon, ready for whatever lay ahead. As the night settled in, Ethan felt a sense of dawning realization wash over him. Whatever pain lay beneath the surface, redemption was possible. Together, they could navigate the complex interplay of family, love, and hope, channeling all that had once been lost into forging a path of positive possibilities. Brighter tomorrows, waiting for them at every turn. And for Jake's sake, they would ensure that their family stayed intact, built on the ashes of what had once been an emotional war into a haven of care for the future. As November rolled in, the days grew shorter, casting a warm glow through the few remaining trees that still clung to their leaves. With Thanksgiving around the corner, Ethan found himself reflecting not just on gratitude but on resilience. It was a season that naturally prompted contemplation, evoking thoughts of family and the myriad ways life could shift in a single moment. The pumpkin carving night had solidified a shift in Ethan's perspective. He was now cautiously optimistic. Sarah had shown genuine commitment to addressing her past, and their co-parenting seemed to flourish despite the shadows that lingered. They had created a fragile truce that felt like solid ground beneath their feet. Jake added laughter to their lives, bridging the chasms where pain had once dwelled. A few nights after their pumpkin carving, Ethan and Sarah sat together discussing Thanksgiving plans, a sense of warmth enveloping the kitchen as the aroma of simmering spices filled the air. Jake was tucked into bed, dreaming of the holiday festivities that awaited. "So, what do you think about taking turns coordinating Thanksgiving dinner?" Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Jake would love for us to celebrate together." Ethan hesitated but felt the familiar pulse of worry. Sharing the day meant navigating uncharted waters. "Do you think it's wise? I mean, what if tensions arise?" "I feel like we've done a lot of work," she countered, "and I want him to experience a family meal without the distractions of our past." "All right," Ethan replied, feeling the pull of responsibility overshadowing fear. "But let's set ground rules. We need to communicate clearly to keep things on track." "Deal. We'll make it work," she said, that glimmer of optimism once again igniting in her eye. As the weeks passed, Ethan and Sarah began collaborating on a menu, sharing ideas and recipes. They connected over garlic mashed potatoes, roasted turkey, and cranberry sauce, their laughter echoing in the kitchen as they navigated cooking techniques. It was a glimpse into what could be. A partnership that revolved around mutual respect, all for Jake's sake. The evening before Thanksgiving dawned, a chilly air settling over South Boston, as Ethan and Sarah finalized plans. They decided to gather at Ethan's house since it provided more space for all their family members. As they prepared, the warmth in their interactions raised Ethan's spirits. Jake bounded about, joyfully helping to set the stage for the impending celebration, and as he caught sight of them laughing together, he beamed brighter than a Christmas tree. "I can't wait for all the food," Jake exclaimed, eyes sparkling. "Neither can we, buddy," Ethan replied, his heart swelling with pride. "But remember, it's also about gratitude. Let's think of something special we can all be thankful for tomorrow." "Spending time together," Jake shouted, leaping for joy. As Thanksgiving Day arrived, Ethan awoke early, the steady murmur of excitement humming in his veins. He moved through his morning routine, focusing on the tasks ahead, while nesting comfortably in the familiar chaos that accompanied holidays. He prepared a giant pot of turkey stock, letting the fragrance drift through the rooms as he pulled open the blinds to allow sunlight to stream in. It felt like the beginning of something new, a blending of hopes shaped by past hardships, awakening like the freshness of a still morning after a storm. A short while later, Sarah arrived with her mother, who had flown in for the holiday. The initial moments bristled with a sense of tension as memories of their pasts loomed nearby, yet both families sought to embrace positivity. Ethan welcomed both Sarah and her mother, Christine, with warmth, swallowing his reservations because they were there to nourish feelings of family, not dredge up old wounds. "Hello, Ethan. It smells amazing in here," Christine said with genuine enthusiasm, her smile broad. "Thanks, Christine. I'm glad you made it. It'll be an adventure of sorts," Ethan replied, casting Sarah a glance that conveyed both anxiety and hope. "Hey, let's all get to work," Sarah said, and the three of them got to preparing side dishes, laughter weaving in between the tasks. Around noon, Jake dashed into the kitchen, excitement thrumming through his young frame. "Is it time to eat yet?" "Not yet, kiddo," Ethan laughed, "but we're getting close. How about you set up the dining table while we finish? I'm on it, Jake declared, marching to the dining room with a mission. As they finished cooking, the smell of roast turkey wafted through the house, and laughter licked the air, each moment wrapping around them like a hug. Yet Ethan still felt the trepidation creeping from the corners of his mind, considering the additional guests arriving soon, his parents, his sister, and her family. What if Mark chose today to poke his head back into their lives? The thought gnawed at Ethan's stomach, a sharp reminder that the past wasn't entirely buried. It was a contrast to the warmth surrounding them. Around 3 o'clock, as the last of the dishes finished simmering on the stove, the doorbell rang. Jake squealed excitedly, running to answer it. His heart raced as he waited for the guests to emerge. To Ethan's relief, it was his parents and sister's family. They entered with cheerful greetings and platters of food, brightening the room. The tension, already flared just moments before, began to dissolve alongside the warmth from the oven. Dinner began moments later, the table laden with an extravagant spread that reflected their combined efforts, an artful collage of flavors and textures. As they settled, Ethan invited everyone to take turns expressing their gratitude, a family tradition he loved. I'm thankful for all the fun we had this year, Jake said, his voice clear and bright, causing smiles to blossom while hearts swelled. Me too, Sarah echoed, her expression genuine. Hey, I'm thankful for our little family and the fact that we've created space for new beginnings. Time passed, laughter echoed, and as everyone continued sharing what they were thankful for, Ethan almost forgot the shadows that hung in the background. Until Mark's name surfaced during an unexpected moment in the conversation, like a curse. We're thankful that Mark isn't part of our family gathering anymore, Sarah's mother stated lightheartedly. A moment of confusion hung in the air, stretching like a thin thread poised to snap. When Sarah flinched, Ethan felt the tension twisting back. It's easy to speak of it now, but what about the wounds, Christine? He said carefully. Those words have histories behind them. Sarah turned toward him, catching the moment in shared understanding. Mom, maybe we should steer clear of old topics. We've worked so hard to move past that. Christine's eyes widened, realizing her blunder. I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't thinking about the deeper implications. I'm sorry, Sarah, she offered sincerely. Let's focus on the present, Ethan interjected, keen to muffle the tension looming over the table. Thanks for being here, and let's raise our glasses instead. He lifted his glass of sparkling cider, encouraging others to join. As everyone raised their glasses, Ethan felt the flickering shadows recede, if only momentarily. To family, he declared, and to creating new memories together. To family, Jake echoed, his youthful exuberance anchoring them all in the moment. Ethan felt warmth cascade through him as laughter filled the air, chasing away remnants of the past. The blend of humor and gratitude created a rich atmosphere, one that fostered genuine connections. As the evening wore on, the echo of their past slowly faded from view, drifting into the periphery as the joy of being together surged forward. They shared stories from Thanksgiving tradition to future aspirations, hoping to create something anew. It was significant, an acknowledgement that while history shaped them, the future could be redefined on their terms. Eventually, after moments of heartfelt anecdotes and laughter, the evening concluded with all of them bundling up for the crisp autumn air, ready to watch the first snowfall in a few days. They stepped outside together, walking in a makeshift parade down the block with Jake's laughter echoing through the air. Ethan turned towards Sarah as they meandered, a smile creeping onto his lips. You did good today, he said softly, his eyes reflecting a shared understanding. Thanks, she replied, a hint of vulnerability shining through. It felt good to celebrate and do things differently. In that moment, he recognized a distinction. The familial warmth was blossoming into something new, and it filled him with hope for what lay ahead, both for their family and the chance for a stronger partnership that extended beyond co-parenting. As they walked side by side through the gathering twilight, Ethan felt the burgeoning sense of gratitude swell within. The hope resonated strong as he held both Jake's and Sarah's hands, interlaced in shared experiences that shaped their new journey together. The journey would not always be easy, but With each step forward, they forged paths anew, creating as they went, cultivating love with roots deep in resilience. As winter settled over South Boston, the first snowflakes gently blanketed the ground, transforming the familiar landscape into a winter wonderland. Ethan found himself wrapped in a blend of nostalgia and hope as he watched Jake frolic outside, gleefully racing around with friends, laughter spilling into the chilly air. The joy radiating from his son filled Ethan's heart with warmth and drove away the lingering shadows of the past. After the Thanksgiving gathering, Ethan and Sarah had continued to forge a respectful partnership. They communicated more openly than they ever had before, navigating the challenges of co-parenting while steadily building a deeper connection. Conversations flowed with ease, punctuated by moments of shared laughter that felt less like obligation and more like companionship. With the holidays approaching, Ethan decided to take a leap and plan a joint Christmas celebration. He could feel his heart race at the thought of blending their families more tightly. This would be a significant step and a true testament to how much they had grown since the messy days of separation. He knew that making this choice meant dismantling the barriers that had once defined their relationship, but he felt ready to embrace the challenge. One chilly evening, with snow falling softly outside, Ethan invited Sarah over to discuss the Christmas plans. They settled in his living room with hot cocoa and cookies left over from a baking frenzy with Jake. The glow from the fireplace cast shadows that danced against the walls, creating an inviting ambiance that wrapped around them like a warm blanket. "Thank you for coming over. I wanted to talk about what we can do for Christmas this year," Ethan said, taking a sip of his cocoa as he gauged her expression. Sarah's eyes brightened. "Of course, I've been thinking about it too. I really want us to do something special for Jake." Ethan hesitated for a moment, fully aware of the precariousness of their new dynamic. "I think it would be amazing if we did a joint celebration. You, me, and Jake. Just a family gathering to create new traditions." A flicker of surprise crossed Sarah's face, quickly replaced by a warmth he hadn't anticipated. "You mean like a real celebration together? Just us?" Her voice filled with an earnest excitement that pulled at his heart. "Exactly," he replied, the tension easing as he leaned forward. "I'm thinking a tree decorating night, maybe baking some treats, and even our own little gift exchange." "I love that idea," she exclaimed, enthusiasm overflowing. "But what about our extended families?" Ethan drew in a breath, maintaining eye contact. "I think this is about us, creating our own space without the complications of our pasts. We can invite our families to be part of it later, but this should be more intimate for us and Jake to reconnect." "Agreed," Sarah stated, a smile breaking across her face as if a dam had burst. "I can already picture us hustling around the house, making memories, and the inevitable mess that will come with it." Ethan chuckled at that thought, imagining flour flying and kids' laughter ringing out through the house. "We can embrace the chaos. It might be a bit unconventional, but I believe it's important for Jake to see we're working together." They continued to brainstorm ideas, refining their plans filled with homemade decorations, festive music, and perhaps a movie night. The laughter and excitement that accompanied their discussions felt infectious, igniting something deeper between them, a partnership rooted in shared experiences, memories, and love for their son. That weekend, they ventured out into the snowy landscape to find the perfect Christmas tree, the air filled with cold excitement. Jake darted ahead, his laughter piercing the cool, crisp air. Ethan and Sarah walked closely beside each other, their shoulder occasionally brushing, igniting small sparks of warmth that thawed the remnants of lingering tension. At the tree farm, they scoured rows of evergreen, Jake leaping from tree to tree, declaring each one was the best one yet. Ethan watched as Sarah engaged with their son, her laughter bright as the sun cutting through clouds. It was a moment of clarity, the sight of them united, reinforcing the bond they had begun to cultivate. Even amidst the upheaval of their past, there was a deep sense of belonging forming. Finally, Jake settled on a tall tree, decorated with a perfect shape, its branches heavy with snow. This one, he exclaimed, eyes wide with joy. "Great choice, buddy," Ethan said, feeling the warmth spread through him. As they stood together taking pictures with their selected tree, a sense of belonging enveloped them. He watched as Sarah snapped photos of him and Jake, warmth in their interactions, sparking moments of joy. "Okay, I need some pictures of you two." She found joy in being a part of this moment. Ethan smiled at Jake, who struck goofy poses trying to make his mom laugh. Within the laughter and summertime snowflakes, Ethan realized that the moments they were creating were filling a void they both had felt since their separation. This was their chance to lay a new foundation, to realize the power of forgiveness and growth, and he felt grateful. As they drove home, Ethan found himself reflecting on the transformation they had undergone together. Jake nestled in the back seat, happily recounting tales of their adventure while snuggled in his winter gear. A profound sense of gratitude washed over him, over the simple moments wrapped in warmth and love, echoing the resilience they had all shown. In the days leading up to Christmas, their excitement bubbled over as they decorated the tree together, filling the house with laughter and the scent of baked goods. They crafted ornaments, homemade cookies, and garlands, chaos weaving through their newfound tradition as flour dust speckled the countertops. On Christmas Eve, they sat together, sipping hot cocoa while watching classic holiday movies. The room glowed in the soft light of the tree, and the negative energy that had previously defined them seemed a distant memory. Laughter spilled freely, echoing through the house as Jake gushed about his day at school, regaling them with stories of his classmates. "Daddy, can we do this every year?" Jake asked, eyes filled with earnestness. Ethan glanced at Sarah, their eyes locking in a moment of understanding. "Of course, kiddo," he replied, wrapping an arm around Jake, who snuggled against him. "Say, we'll make this a family tradition." "Promise?" Jake insisted, his voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I promise," Sarah interjected, her voice steady and full of conviction. "From now on, it's about us, together." That night, as they settled into sleep, Ethan felt fulfillment wash over him. Despite the myriad challenges they had navigated, the opportunity to create something new together filled him with hope. The world beyond their little bubble felt less daunting and more manageable, a bright future emerging amid the winter's chill. The following morning, they awoke to the soft glow of Christmas Day. Jake raced down the stairs, heart pounding with excitement at the sight of presents piled beneath the tree. Ethan watched through a veil of warmth, catching the rush of excitement as Jake squealed and hurried to rifle through the gifts. Laughter filled the living room as they unwrapped colorful packages and celebrated the joy of being together. "You two truly lit up my life," Ethan said softly to Sarah, appreciating the small gestures they shared in the moments that day. It was a grace that had evaded them for so long. As they sat there amidst scattered wrapping paper and laughter, they felt hope blossom within them, a collective joy rising through the remnants of sorrow. Ethan smiled wide, finally allowing himself to believe again in the power of family, love, and growth, understanding that while their journey was far from perfect, they were in this together, crafting a tapestry woven through resilience and heart, the path forward promising to be vibrant and illuminated.